Good morning. Today we're hiking in the Redwoods in the Santa Cruz Mountains. And I want to point out how resilient the Redwoods are. This would have been an old growth mother tree. And as you've noticed, these cuts here are where the loggers about 100 years ago chopped in. There's one here, there's another one down here. And they'd put a plank in there, and that's how they got up higher on the tree to get away from the cross grain down at the bottom and the size of the base. What I want to point out is how resilient they are. These trees are what we call second growth, and they've come back. They're about 100 years old out of the same root ball that this tree has, the same heart. So all these trees right here in this ring are growing out of her heart, basically. And once again, they're about 100 years old and they're about 150 feet tall. And so this is what the redwoods do, the life force, is you cut down one and it gives us 5 more. So we just wanted to point out a few things on the hike this morning. After they logged the redwoods about 100 years ago, the forest was completely torn up and denuded of vegetation, and nature moved in what's called chaparral trees and brush. This would be an example. This is a tan oak. They moved in from over in what we call the valley, and because they're fast growing, so it's kind of nature's way of holding the soil and holding the mountain until the redwoods get reestablished. Now, these are all dying. There's sudden oak death, they call it. And you can see one here that rotted off on its stump there. There's another one down below us here. And they're laying all over the mountain, and they actually become fodder and fertilizer for mushrooms. Love, especially the oak. The mushrooms will get in here and they'll start coming up pretty soon. And they prefer actually the oak, so it's part of the process of how nature recovers. Mushrooms coming out of this oak. It's been down maybe a little less than a year. You can see these are turkey tails, and various varieties will come in as it decomposes, and it's almost like reincarnation in a way, and then other things, it turns into other things. This is one of the larger trees that they cut down. Bear in mind, this is just the heartwood that's left from all 100 years of forest fires and erosion and decomposition, but the original tree was probably out to about here, all the way around, so it'd be, 15 to maybe 20 feet across. It'd be a giant, almost 300 feet tall, 2,000 years old. Example of the mother tree in there that they cut down 100 years ago, and then these would be coming out of the same root ball. This one, the ones in back, recovering.
Here's mushrooms growing on an old oak tree. Big mushrooms. More over here.
Many years ago, when I was designing this trail, laying it out, just walking the area to get the design for the building, I came through this particular area and there was a fresh lion kill laying right here. It just had happened. and many years ago, but there's still a few of the bones here. Animals, I think, taken in. The skull was here for many years. I had it hanging in the tree here to kind of get permission from the animals to go through their territory. So I considered it a little altar. When you get in there, point the camera up. Coming. Kids, and I give them the same kind of talk as we go along. It's like a beautiful classroom, you know. This is Hester Creek crossing. Here she comes.
Here she comes, it's just a walking down the trail saying, look at her go.
Oh, she knows the
She
step.
knows.
It's like a dance step coming down those rocks. You got to know the moves.
She knows the move.
She's got it.
Here's the twin Arjuna trees. When he was crawling on his hands and knees, he knocked down the twin Arjuna trees.
had a lot of burrow
And
in
out
them, so
of the
they didn't wanna
trees
cut
there did appear Mani Griven la couvert. I was in Vrindavan and taught all the kids Krishna book songs when they were young. It's like, it starts out, oh happiness, oh joy. Nanda Maharaj had a baby boy, crawling on his hands and his knees. He knocked down the twin Arjuna trees, and out of the trees there did appear Mani Grivana la couvert. And then I don't know all the words. The kids know all the words.
We're at the bottom of the hill now on the Hester Creek Bridge, and we've dug a hole in the creek, and you can see over here there's a water pump and a filling fire hose to fill fire trucks. So if there's a fire in this area, we can fill the trucks here from this pump over here. We leave it in all fire season, and it'll be removed soon.
This is Robert Lynn Creek. It comes down from a fresh spring, and it meets up with Hudson Creek right over here. So it's the confluence of Robert Lynn Creek and Hester Creek. And look right behind you, there's also this giant mother that they felled 100 years ago. This is called East Loop. Going up. See all the giant ferns? Aren't they amazing?
So we're on a section of trail, as you can see down here. It looks like it was already something happened here. Well, it did. In the 1800s, we've done the research, and the original stagecoach road from Santa Cruz area over the hill to where San Jose is now this was part of that stagecoach. There's very little of it left of that stagecoach road because most of it is eroded into the creek. And there was a very famous driver of this coach back in those days, and his supposedly name was Charlie. And Charlie drove the main stage for many, many, many years. And it turned out when Charlie passed away, when they did the funeral preparations, they found out Charlie was a woman. And the reason she took this identity as a male is she wanted to vote. So she voted all those years as a man, and nobody knew until she passed away. And this is probably part of the road that Charlie drove down as one of the first pioneering liberated women. How about that?
Woohoo!
At this point, by this lovely big fir tree, which they never logged these firs, they are native here, and they didn't log them because the wood is much harder than the redwoods. So in those days, they kind of left them, so there's some survivors of fir trees. But we're at the base, starting to go up our trail called East Loop, and you see it's quite steep over here. Well, I call this is part of my rehab program. I bring people out here that have issues with substance abuse. This is my 12-step program. There's 12 switchbacks to the top of the mountain, so you can't be intoxicated and do this program. So here we are heading up the 12-step program.
There's lots of landslides when it rains. So, but usually only the oak fall. The redwoods hang on to each other by their roots.
At this point, by this lovely big fir tree, which they never logged these firs, they are native here, and they didn't log them because the wood is much harder than the redwoods. So in those days, they kind of left them, so there's some survivors of fir trees. But we're at the base, starting to go up our trail called East Loop, and you see it's quite steep over here. Well, I call this is part of my rehab program. I bring people out here that have issues with substance abuse. This is my 12-step program. There's 12 switchbacks to the top of the mountain, so you can't be intoxicated and do this program. So here we are heading up the 12-step program. This would be the stairway to heaven. And I'm climbing a stairway to heaven. We're doing some track education down here in the mud. What do you suppose kind of track that is? What is it? Here's another one. See these two toes? What would that be? I'm asking. What do you think? Well, it's a deer. Now, is it a male deer or a female deer by the track? It's a male deer. And how do we know that? Okay, you see the two toes here and here? Then these are called the dew claws in the back. Only the male has that. Here they are again on this one, right there and there. So that's a male. If these weren't here, it would be a female. See it? Mm-hmm. Well, that's a tree that's probably going to be on the totem in the new room in the house. We'll drag it out of there because it's cured. It's been there since we've been here. So it's dried, and it's all heartwood. And here we are, where we've come back up the trails to a road on our property, and cutting this road, we came across these fossils, and we're at about 1,000 feet elevation. These are all some kind of clamshell. There's a whole vein of them that run up the mountain here, and it's just interesting to think that this is all sandstone here. See, it's quite soft. And this was all seabed at one time, and it's been pushed up from tectonic activity to 1,000 feet. And on that thought, there's actually have been fossils found very high up in the Himalayas, like thousands of feet up. So just to show you that the earth has moved and made mountains, and it's constantly changing, and we're part of all that. This site is our ceremonial site, and it hasn't been used since before COVID. Anyway, this was designed by a Lakota chief from South Dakota. I'm very good friends with his son, Eagle Horse, who lives close by. And it's all built traditionally. This was willow, and it was covered when we use it, of course, with breathable fabrics and whatnot. The indigenous people would have used probably hides and things like that. But anyway, out here is where the rocks were heated. And then the fireman would slowly take in, about 6 rocks at a time. And they would chant in there. And all traditional chants led by Eagle Horse. It was very beautiful. And the lodge is traditionally laid out. If you look over here, there's a red pole. That would be north. Over here, there's a yellow pole. That would be the east. And your doorway always faces the east because it's kind of a birthing thing when you go in and out of the sweat lodge. This pole here would be the earth sky pole. Earth, sky. And they're always laid out like this. Over here, the south pole, it's white. And then behind this tree, there's a black pole. That would be the west pole. And the lodge is in the center of all the directions. So anyway, we'll be back doing sweat lodges one of these days here when people are comfortable with that. Here's a great example of mushrooms coming out of one of the tan oaks that's been down for a few years. You see how they use that for food, and